Welcome to the Journey 2020. I'm Charles Morris, happy to be here with you coming off the weekend and hope that you did have a blessed weekend indeed. I'm enjoying the weather. In a way, I think they're saying that the temperatures are below normal. And for those who are familiar with Florida, you know how it is in June, July, and August. A few weeks ago, actually about a week or so ago, the temperatures was in the 90s, but currently the temperature's been very comfortable and some cool nights. It's almost like late fall, early spring here in Florida right now. Here we're in the middle of May, and we were talking about the year 2020 and what 2020 was, and already we're about in the year 2021 in the middle. So that's one thing that you say that as you get older, because time seems to change, but it never changes. A minute is always a minute, an hour is always an hour, and a week is always a week. It's just that when you get older, time seems to go by a little faster. But anyway, I'm Charles Morris. We've been around since 2013. And on the Journey 2020, which originally the concept and the idea was by Dr. John Robertson, who I've been working with for many, many years. It came to me, he said, Charles, I got an idea and a concept, and he actually named the show The Journey. And so we were able to find a domain name that was not taken, and that was The Journey 2020. So here we are. Over the years, I reflect back, and she doesn't know this, but my guest today, I'm going to tell her this, that about 3 weeks ago, about a month ago, I actually went through my VHS tapes. And I actually went through about 300 VHS tapes. I mean, at least 300. And I found some old stuff, and actually that I've shared here on the Journey 2020 as some of my summits that I've done. And it was some of them that I'd actually forgot about that I was like, oh yeah, and I've actually gotten some feedback. But there's a few of them that I found that when I do play them, I'm going to share them on her page. So she's going to be a little surprised, because every time I have her come on the show, we reflect back on so many things that we have done in the past. And when I say a lot, we have done a lot, which I'm happy to welcome Monica May. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Charles. Thanks for having me.
Wow. Oh, you look so good. Wow, you just went in. Oh, you look so beautiful.
Thank you.
I was just telling the people about how we have worked together for so many years, and it's been a lot of years over the years.
hmm hmm It really has been. And from the very first time we met, we've been in each other's corner silently, publicly. Whenever the other one has needed us, it's just a phone call. And sometimes those calls come last minute. I'll say, Charles, I'm in a tight. Can you please come and help? And he always does, and then vice versa. So that's good kinship, brother and sister, good friendship, and professional mixing.
Well, to me, honestly, Monica, because you're one of God's children,
Thank you.
and you do so much, a lot that some people know and a lot of people don't know about what you've been doing. And with someone like you, it's amazing the things that God put in people. And a lot of times, I know you don't even question yourself. You just do what you're supposed to do, and without even hesitation,
hmm
when you see something that needs to be done. And there's a thing that I say that I realize if I've gotten older, and that is this right here, Monica. And I say
What's
this
that?
to Haki, and I say this to people like you. The things that you do, you're not changing lives, you're changing generations. And that's what our purpose is. It's not just this person, it's just not today,
Ooh,
tomorrow. You're changing
ooh,
generations to come. And
ooh.
that is such something that you can't put a price on. And it's true, you know. And
With
every
that
time I talk
team
to you,
that we do.
I tell this story because it's true. You have no idea how many times that I talk about Monica May, and that I have witnessed for myself more than once, more than twice. When you do what you do, you're able to spot people, these little girls, in the middle of whatever you're doing, and you go, we need to take that one outside. We need to talk with that one, and we need to talk
Wow.
with that one. And I can
Wow.
remember a couple of times at my event, you said, Charles, your event today was for those two little girls right there. And I was like,
Hmm.
wow, wow, wow,
Hmm.
wow. So
You
what I
know,
want you to do,
Charles,
okay, go
what I
ahead.
was going to say is we're not tasked to save an entire. We're tasked to save with whoever can receive it. We just need to continuously put it out there because what you witnessed yesterday, there were three families that I was really looking forward to pouring into. And those three families, at whatever for whatever reason, at the last minute chose not to come. And all the parents said was, I'm not feeling well today. And that's okay. We'll catch you next time. Okay. But you know what? I tell everybody, you've got to make an investment in you and your family. And if that investment is only 90 minutes and it's free, don't miss out. Don't miss out.
There's a lot that we talk about. There's a show that I started a little over a year ago, and it's called a Pastor's Roundtable. And we have about four, sometimes five pastors, and we go into biblical readings and understanding, and we talk about these things and where a lot of this stuff comes from, and the generational curses and our inability to step out of these things that, as I was talking about, changing generations, and that we become comfortable in our dysfunction. And I asked a question like I taped the Pastors Roundtable last night to show this coming Wednesday. And one of the questions that I asked was how we accept the dysfunction and it become normal and we can't see past our dysfunction and it becomes our way of life and we embrace it because we know of nothing else and we think the pain and the frustration and the struggle is what it's supposed to be, and it's hard, I think, sometimes for us to see past what we've been around. And the saying is that what we see is what we will be. And I always
Mhm.
talk about a lot of times when you see people and when you hear them and you see their actions, you learn that they only know the four blocks that they grow up in. So their world
So
is,
true.
their understanding is the four blocks. And
Mhm.
it's, you have to get them to see beyond the four blocks that there's a whole nother world and universe out there that is waiting to embrace them, just like they have embraced those four blocks that they know so well.
Sometimes that could be generational. That's what they
Mm.
saw their moms and grandmothers do, sit in that window, just perched there or on the stoop. My husband is from Chicago, and he talks about there is a woman who lived next door to him. She's still there. And he says she was on the stoop when I left 20 years ago. And when I go back now, and I promise you, when I go back with him, that same sister is sitting right there on that stoop. And sometimes it occurred to me that that might not be her fault. It could be something in her mental makeup that makes her hostage to that stoop. And I can't judge that part, and I can't determine if it is a mental health issue or if it is just narrow-mindedness. But I know that I have expanded my reasoning for certain behaviors, knowing that stigmas do exist.
Well, as you get older, as I've gotten older, I've learned so much about how much that we don't know a lot of times that we're dealing with mental illness, and that this country has really don't know how to deal with mental illness from the standpoint of recognizing it, and then after you recognize it, how do you deal with it?
Mhm.
For an example, there's probably, not probably, a lot of people that are in prison are have mental challenges. Every day, I mean, it's an everyday occurrence in life that there's some type of challenge mentally that I guess around the world, but we don't, I guess, recognize it or care enough to do something like, for an example, I think maybe for the first time ever that they're now talking with law enforcement more about how to deal with mental illness when they come upon it, to be able to recognize it. It's because, you know, they just usually deal with it with force, and sometimes it doesn't end well, just simply because they're not trained, their mindset, and so on. And even for ourselves, like for an example, because I grew up dyslexic with some challenges that I faced and having to overcome, because of me being familiar with certain things when it comes to stuttering and speaking and reading,
Mhm.
I can sometimes tell some people's struggles because of my struggle, and I can recognize it. And I know that in law enforcement, that I think they're finally now getting to the point where it's starting to be discussed more.
Mhm.
And I think that's so very important.
It is, Charles. And the other thing is that we're realizing that without that, there are going to be a lot more deaths. We're talking about police reform, and they talk about defunding the police departments, and that is certainly not a good idea, because if you think we're in dire straits right now, it would really become the OK Corral if we were to defund or whatever it is that there is a cry for. What we really need are the resources for further mental health training, for understanding of the social dilemmas, understanding the economic impoverishments of our communities that have impact on the younger people in our society. That's what we need to manage. Because if you recall, the one particular death that stood out to me was a brother in, I think it was Rochester or Buffalo, New York. When the police came upon him, they were called for a wellness check. The brother had been exhibiting mental health behavior, and that's erratic. And by the time the police got to him, he was totally naked. And if you're familiar with upstate New York temperatures, it's frigid. So he's outside, no clothes on. That lets you know that there's a problem. The police decided that they were going to put a bag over his head. They were, because I guess he was spitting. Um, that man wound up on the ground. That man wound up being tased. That man wound up losing his life. Now, just imagine if someone was more adept at what to do with behavior as erratic as that, that they had been sent to that house instead of just two police officers on a wellness check. So when we talk about defunding, not the right piece. There are more and more mental health cases in our families than we can even imagine, and in our communities as well. So, understanding what may be a trigger for that family member, or understanding what they may have or may not have taken as their medication. And I don't want to go on, but I can tell you a situation. When I left radio at one point and moved to Houston, Texas, I worked specifically with the homeless population. That's why I have such a great affinity for them now. And understanding the importance of medication and counseling, the two have to go hand in hand. I could look at some of my clients when they were on their meds and their behavior and their conversation versus when they were off and how erratic they were. Now, because we were a faith based operation, when police had to be called in, they knew to come in with a gentle mind and spirit to be able to corral this member who was for us a family member, and they not any real connection, but even if they were or weren't, they knew to come in gently. Now, this was before we thought about mental health training and the necessity for it within the police force. So it's just something we have to learn to live with and to learn to understand more.
Yeah. Now, I was going to ask before we actually got started, I was going to say, well, people out there that don't know Monica May, I wanted Monica May to give a little history on who she is and where she's from. Because coming from New York, New York City,
New York.
a true New Yorker, why
I
don't you
am.
give us a little
I
history
am.
on Monica May?
Someone said to me at dinner the other night, she's from the real New York, versus like, yeah. So I am born and raised in Harlem, really. And father was a musician. My mother worked for the city of New York. My sister was a hair salon owner. She had moved to DC with her family. I do come from a close knit family, but also a family that we didn't communicate a whole lot. And we didn't communicate because we were just loved, and you were to understand that. I needed a little bit more, and I got off track a little bit more. And you just go through life. But at some point, I decided I wanted to go into radio, and family didn't understand that because I was a pretty quiet kid, very shy. And so they're like, but you don't even talk. But my love for music and the conversations I had going on in my own head told me that that's what I wanted to do. So I did go to college. I did get a degree in it. And it was very interesting. I went to an HBCU my first year of college. By the way, I talked myself into college because I didn't take ACTs, SATs. I didn't get the good scores in high school. Didn't graduate with good GPA either. But you know what? I have life experience. And while the other students were kind of playing bid whist in the cafeteria, I was getting on those buses and going to my internships. I went to school upstate New York. My internships were in Rochester and in Buffalo. And in the deep snow, I was making it. I didn't miss any of my days. Thumbing rides, doing whatever I needed to do. I was grinding because I really wanted that radio, that television career. And I did get it. As soon as I graduated, I worked down in DC and moved around a lot. And that's what radio does. So when I talk to my own interns or other students who are interested in going into the communications or media period, I let them know you may have to go into a very small market and do it. Live somewhere that you've never, ever, ever been. Learn that city and become the go-to person. Extend yourself, learn everything you can about that city, and just hone your skill there. And then start searching for the larger markets. And so I have gone to very small cities, and I've also worked in the Atlanta, and I would love to have worked in New York, but as we both know, nobody was ever going to leave those gigs. So I
Right.
didn't get to work in New York. I would have given anything, my eye tooth, to do that. But I've done very well in the field, and I was able to maintain a career in radio and television for 40 years. I have not stopped. I've not retired or anything like that. I just wanted to come off the radio at this point. Very lucky to have worked in Florida twice. I worked for 102 Jams for a few years, and then when that format changed, I decided to move to Houston, Texas, and that's when I worked with the homeless population there. And then while I was there, Katrina and Rita hit. So the grants that I was working under kind of changed from what I was doing, the soft skills, the life skills, to housing for the people who were in need. So I was kind of, what am I going to do next? And lo and behold, Star 94.5 had been coming after me for a while. I decided to move back here, and they, in fact, moved me back here to do community affairs for them. And I looked away because it's like, what was my job really supposed to be before I became the producer and host for Tom Joyner's show? But I wound up in that seat, and I stayed in that seat for 13 years. And I can honestly say I enjoyed and I learned so much, and I grew in so many ways. And when it was time for it to be over, I wasn't looking for it to be over, but that's what he said so. And his timing is always perfect. And I had to decide that it would be time for me to let the chair go to someone else. And I haven't missed a beat. What I do now, Charles, is I produce webinars for different companies. I'm working on one for the city of Orlando, which when we get finished, I'll go back to my research on. It is Haitian Awareness Month, Haitian Heritage Month.
Hmm.
So we'll be doing something for the city for that, along with the Greater Haitian American Chamber of Commerce, and the council will be a part of it, and we'll be really going into diving into the art, the history, the culture, the religion, even the food, so many different areas that make Haiti so rich. So that's going to be about 6:30 tonight, tomorrow night on Zoom, and you can go to the City of Orlando's website for that. But in the midst of all of that, about 8 years ago, even while I was still on the radio, there was something that hit me. I was speaking to a group of girls at this house called Beta, and Beta House was a place for teenage pregnant moms.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
would go and I would do
yeah.
these circle workshops with the girls. But I realized after about a year and a half, Charles, I said, ooh, I saw you about 18 months ago. And so I was noticing we had some repeat teens coming through there. So I said, let me get a little bit more in depth about my own life. And I sat in my car one day and I wrote my life out on a legal pad from the time I was 12 years old up until that day. And it's known as the teen letter. And I read that letter in third person so they don't know who I'm talking about. And I go through my pitfalls, my downs, my ups, my highs, my lows. And I take them up until the fact that I'm on the radio because they didn't know who I was talking about. I presented the letter as a young girl that I used to mentor. And so, Charles, from that moment forward, I said, wow, if this makes such an impact, especially on the adults who were in the room, you could hear tears because I was hitting some triggers, some points that they had gone through. And
Hmm.
that's when the whole piece for Let's Spill the Tea really started. My daughter and I sat down and we mapped out what we wanted it to be. So she and I are actually the co-founders of the nonprofit Let's Build a Tea. And our goal is to bring mothers and daughters and also now dads and daughters closer so that they understand what's going on. And especially with COVID, the pitfall of social media, and I call it the pitfall of social media, has become more prevalent. And that has led to an increase in trafficking of our young girls and in different formats, because now it's not trafficking where the girl has run away, it's trafficking that somebody has lured her out of her home and she's able to come home at night, but what she does during the day are the risky behaviors. And that might sound like some of the relationships that some of us older girls went through, but now it's got a name to it. And when we bring that name to the girls' attentions, you can see their faces change, Charles, because then they realize that's what's happening to me. So we're exposing human trafficking. We're exposing the fact that girls are now sexting more than ever before. And that's texting sexually explicit pictures of yourself or acts of yourself. And one of the speakers at Let's Build a Tea, Dr. Rowe or Dr. Ronisha Randall, said that she's a dean at one of the schools here, and she said she had to be the one to break it to a young girl of the trouble that she was in because a boy asked her to send him a picture, and she did. And she thought she was just sending it to him. He sent it to everyone in the school. So everyone was looking at her. Now he's wrong, but she's the one who sent the picture. So she's the one who's going to be in trouble. So we were explaining to parents, talk to your kids about this, educate them about the perils that they're going to face, because charges, now the police get involved because that's pornography. So these are some of the things that we're dealing with, especially during this pandemic when our parents have to go back to work. We're left home to, are you doing your work? Are you only doing your work on that computer? What else are you doing? So we're just opening up Pandora's box so that parents can see and girls can understand that they need to be protected and they need to be a little bit wiser about what they do and they and say, And then our other speaker was straight up about HIV. She is one of the few young Black pediatric pharmacists working in an emergency room at a hospital here locally. And she started an organization called Let's Beehive. And Dr. Andrea Dunn gave them the statistics about how young the girls are that she's come in contact with who are already infected, either with sexually transmitted diseases or HIV. So those are the kinds of conversations that we have when we talk about let's spill the tea. So that's what I do, and that's my background.
Yeah, I was able to be blessed to be with both when the fathers were there and
Oh,
yesterday when the
yeah.
mothers were there. And I wanted to ask you, what is it like? Is it, how do you prepare? Is it the preparation is the same for the mothers of, how do you prepare for one versus the other? Or is it the same?
Well, that's a very, very, very good question. I have to make it a little softer, believe it or not, for the dads. Because in their eyes, their daughters are their princesses. And they are, but they're not angels. They're not angels. And we go through also with them, how does your dad make you feel when you've disappointed him? Because that's a big thing. Girls love their moms, but they are in love with their dad. And if it makes any sense, there is a difference there. And if a
Right.
girl has the I would have to say the luck of having her dad in her life, um, when you disappoint him, boy, the results are just so different. And I just have to prepare them both. So I walk into it gentler. I have my speakers approach it gentler. And then we give them the bomb bomb because you got to give them the raw. And so it is a little different. So that is a very good question about how I manage the day. And you'd be surprised how the dads walk out of there like, oh my goodness, I had no idea she felt like that when she saw me come in the room or when I touched her shoulder. It's deep. It's really deep. And so yesterday was something that we will do again with the promiscuity, the sexual diving into with HIV, as well as the social media. So dads, get ready because it's going to be a very open discussion, and they're ready for it. So you can register at info@letspillthetea.org.
Well, I was gonna say, and I don't know if you remember this, but I told you that I wanted to get with you and Moses Mailer because he was one of the counselors speaking
Yeah.
when I was there
Mhm.
with the dad, and I don't forget who else was there. But I'm always in awe of the fact that fathers with the mentality when it comes to and I'm finding it out too with mothers, but the whole concept of them and it comes to sex and their daughters, it just blows my mind that fathers have this attitude as if though the inevitable is not going to happen. And so it's like whatever that is that they think that their child is whatever that is, and that whatever that I don't know because I don't understand it because it's like it's gonna happen. Your child is human. These stages that you go through, hormones or what life is, it's like you put yourself in this state of mind, like whatever that is, not my child, and it's just mind-boggling to me. It's crazy to me, whatever that is.
You said that before,
Right?
and I thought it was because I said Charles doesn't have a daughter, so
No,
he
no,
wouldn't
no,
understand.
no.
But here's where I'm going with that.
Okay.
Here's let me just say this. Here's where I'm going with that. So it made me laugh, but then I have to remind him that. Do you remember some of the ways you thought about some of the girls that you were dealing with? How you would look at them And so dads don't, they know what they were doing. So
Well,
that's
well,
the thing.
that's my point of why I think if I had a child, it would be so easy for me to talk to him because I remember what it was like. So I would be so anxious that, and not in a way
You said
to
that before too.
to want to make the guys look bad, because to me that's part of life, and I have to prep them for themselves, for their self-value, for them to make the right choices. I don't look at it
Hmm.
as if though these guys coming at my daughter. I have to look at it as if though my daughter have to understand what life's about. These things are coming. How do I make the right decision? That's how I look
Well,
at
you
it.
have, and that's really, really, really good. That's a healthy way to look at it. That is the foundation for a really good relationship,
Right,
because you can't start that relationship as a teenager. You're instilling that kind of confidence in your daughter when she is a princess. When she's growing up to become a queen, she needs that.
right,
So this is why I encourage adults to make the right choices with the person they decide to have children with, because that will determine just how much you can be in that person's life. If you're not going to get married, or whether you are going to get married, because you have to understand real is real and be willing to suffer the consequences when you hold back. But
right.
Charles, you do have a very healthy way of looking at how to raise a teen. And that's all we're trying to get dads to understand. We understand how you were thinking, but
Hmm.
understand what they're going through now too. And
Right,
let's talk them through it and put you out of the equation.
right,
Take your own emotion out of the equation and
right.
just be real honest. So that's all we do with Let's Spill the Tea.
Yeah, because you know our friend Ken
Hmm.
Moore. He
Hmm.
has three daughters, and we've had
Yes.
that conversation of what we're talking about now. And his, you know, and we talk about when we were young. We talk about, and that's what we, you know, we have talked about him being a father and how you talk to your daughters. And he said he's even got in arguments with the mother because the mother is kind of being this, you know, how parents are being. And he said I don't think their mother's being real about this, is that these encounters are going to happen, and we have to help them better prepare themselves to deal with the reality of life. To sit there and think that my child is not this, and this is not real. And so it's kind of like, yeah. And so we have those type of conversations. Now, of course, I don't have kids, but to me, Monica, I'm serious. I would be so
You
dying to
say it
sit
all
there
the
and talk with
time.
my kids about it. You know, and then
You say that. Mhm.
like yesterday, and even I was going to ask you because it still appears the same thing with the mothers in the conversation, and I see that you're trying to open that door where the mothers can talk to their daughters about it. You know, and then what's funny is my friends over the years, when they talk about their sons, it's the same thing. It's like, okay, you got this 14, 15-year-old son. Oh, he better not be. And I'm like, are you crazy? And I'm looking at them
Well,
like,
you know,
really?
it's
Oh,
the
he better
dean
not
that
be.
spoke. Dr. Ronisha said, listen, your child is going to give two faces: the face they show at home and the face they show in public, especially school. And she does this thing with kids randomly where she does a check in. And she said to one young boy, she said, you know what? You've changed. I want you to check in with me every Wednesday. Just, nothing's wrong. You're not in trouble. But she noticed that he started out as this real nice, scholarly young man. But in order for him to, I guess, fit in with whatever crowd he chose, he changed the way he dressed, changed his behavior. And those two things changed him in class. They changed his grades and everything. See, kids are under a lot of pressure, and we have to understand that as well. We were too, but there's a whole lot more with social media that makes our kids prey to a lot more pressure than we ever experienced. And so I step aside now and let other experts come in and talk with the kids and their moms about what they're facing, because I mean, I'm going to put it to you raw, but I'm going to let them give you the proof and the statistics and all of that other stuff, because it's real important for us to understand. And then you need to understand that if someone calls you from the outside and says, Mr. Morse, your son Charles Jr. just said go myself, and we were in front of a lot of people, and you say, we don't even use that kind of language in my, but let me just share with you, in order for him to impress someone,
Right.
that's what he had to say, and had to say was the key. That's the operative. Had to do with that little girl, the operative. I just, there's so many things that happen unbeknownst to us as parents that our kids are having to deal with. And it takes a T to bring it out there. So all I'm trying to do is give parents the confidence to raise them and hear the real deal of what's happening out there. And kids to have the confidence to be able to be okay when they know that something is wrong and not to do it, and to speak up for themselves. That's all I'm trying to do. Those three things.
Yeah. Yesterday, when they were talking about when you were talking when they made reference to the picture, and I was happy that they used that example, and then going back to having the self-esteem, or talking about the self-esteem and how important that is, because if it was done for these reasons, because a lot of times those things are done because of the low self-esteem and wanting the
Mhm.
approval of somebody, and somebody that you like and hope that they'll like you back, and you trying to uh, get into their corner and be accepted, and because it's so important, especially at that age. And then I think one of the things that is always talked about, and I think one of the things that you also emphasize to the fathers, that their first date should be with their fathers, so they would know how to be treated and how to be talked
Right.
to and what's accepted and how important that is.
Mhm.
Because I've even had some adults that had been part of a counseling group that on Fridays, I have to laugh because it's a support group for women, and I've been on it for about like 3 months, and I'm generally the only guy that's been on these with the support
Mhm.
group. And sometimes I'm sitting there going, "Oh my God!" I'm like, "Oh," I'm like, "Oh my goodness!" I said, "Yeah," but some of the topics and the suggestion was, one of the topics was father daughter relationship, in addition to the mother daughter. But when you hear them talk the father daughter relationship and how broken it was, and how they say, I wish that my father would have been like my first date, or I wish that my father would have taught me so I didn't go look for something, the same story,
Yeah.
looking for something in the wrong places.
Mhm.
And quite a few of them validated that I wish that my father had been in my life to help me, because I'm out looking for something, and I'm in the wrong places.
Hmm. And a mom can't validate that. A mom can't do it all by herself. And sometimes that's why I say about choosing that mate, you can't you can't always choose who that person is going to be, that is going to be the father of your child, or the mother of your baby. But I will say that if there is not that biological father, let's find a grandfather, let's find an uncle, let's find a man that she can trust, but it has to really be vetted, because sometimes those uncles and grandfathers are the ones that are shaming the family also.
Right.
Um, we have to get to a point where we can trust, but we also have to get to a point where we can learn and do the best that we can with what we have. And that's the thing. It took me a while to understand that I was given the best that I could possibly have been given by two human beings who loved me immensely, because sometimes we hold people accountable for this, that, and the other. And that's the other part of Let's Spill the Tea. And that's why I work with people through counseling and, work with them over a period of time, because forgiveness is major in terms of your growth. And so part of what Let's Build the Tea raises money to do is provide that mental health counseling. So we will pay for the first session, and then what we find is that a lot of our families either have Medicaid or they have actual insurance and can pay for it, but they've never been introduced to counseling. So I always have a counselor present at my events so that they can speak up about mental health, but also if there's an appointment to be made, they can make it right there. Because if I have to leave and think about it and call you back, I may not do it. But I try to make them realize that counseling is there's nothing wrong with it. And the mental health expert yesterday said because a child may be autistic, dyslexic, they may be an ESL learner, doesn't mean that they're crazy, doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with them. It just means that they learn and they love differently. So we have to be patient with everyone. So that's really all I'm trying to do. I'm a communications expert, so I'm just trying to get families to learn how to communicate. That's it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
it.
it's funny because when you were talking about Beta, because I featured them, I think 3 times when I was at Orange TV, and I had the executive director on a couple of times, and so I was very familiar
Yeah.
with them, and I also live right next door to them. When I lived there off of Lake Underhill Road there at
Okay. Yeah.
Conway, so I was very familiar with them and the great work that they do, and also with one of the summits that I did a few years ago, Monica, I did a
Hmm.
summit on trying to pull in the single mothers, but in general, but not necessarily the mothers, but it was focused on the mothers. And on the panel, I had Dr. Robinson, I had Vince Carter, and I don't forgot who, but I had at least maybe four gentlemen on the panel, and the discussion was how important it is for the mothers to try to have a father figure in their child's life, to
Very important.
understand that this is not for you to do by yourself, and to try to help those who have the mindset that I can do this. I don't need a man to raise my child. And so
Well,
I don't know how successful it was, but we tried to help them in a way that I felt was the best of that I could do at the time, to try to give them the information to have a discussion. And it went over pretty well, and there was some questions, but we and Dave Washington actually still talks about it to this day because of some of the comments that was made, but overall, it's it went pretty well. But let me ask you, how often or how common is it for you to run across that woman who says, I don't need a man to raise my child, and what is it that you would try to say to her?
well, it's often, and it's generational as
Hmm.
well. So what I try to do is explain to them, well, maybe you don't need them to raise them, but why not get them to help you have conversations and experiences? Maybe you don't need them to raise them, but if you're a single mom raising a boy, at some point you can take them only but so far. And then they are going to need some male influence. And the same thing for the girl. You can take them but so far, but at some point they are going to need to know what it feels like to be held, hugged, kissed, on the forehead, on the cheek, um, have open arms from some type of a male figure, because it's just necessary. That was one of the leading comments I made, that everybody needs human touch. And there was one girl in particular, one young Hispanic girl who came yesterday. And the very first thing I did to her, I'd never seen this girl in my life. And I said, if you don't mind me, I'll hug you. And she said, looked at me like, huh? And then she said, with her mask on, yes. And so I hugged her, but from the side. I gave her a pastor's hug.
Hmm.
There is a way to do it. There doesn't have to be a frontal hug. But I do that to the girls that I think need it,
Hmm.
can tolerate it. There were a set of twins that were there yesterday, too, and
Hmm.
they're being raised by someone who is not their biological mom. And I watched the body language through some of the pictures that you sent over, and I'm going to share some of those pictures with her. And sometimes what we say does not match up to our body language. And so I'm going to share with her what I noticed, what I observed. And I'm going to ask her, did one of the girls tell you what I told her? And that was that Miss So and so and so really loves you, really is in your corner, and really wants what's best for you. And I've had to do that before with other girls who have come to the tea and just through the project, because we not only have those teas, but we also do a retreat. And the retreat is intense. The retreat is 3 whole days. It's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We're doing it in October this year. And it's girls who have gone through the tea workshop throughout the year. We're also going to do a virtual boot camp this summer, too. And they're girls who are from all over. And so now these girls will meet up and their moms will be there too. And the basic thing is to see we're all alike. We're all going through the same string of problems. We are. So let's sit down and help each other, but also let's teach our girls to learn how to bond too. Because girls learn at an early age how to look people up and down, how to give them that attitude. And so what we're trying to do is lessen that and enforce confidence and growth from that perspective. So it's a chance to turn everything from inside out, looking at your beauty. The girls and their moms are given mirrors in their bags. And so tonight, I didn't tell them yesterday what that mirror was for. I saw some of them use the mirror right away. But that mirror is not to observe how beautiful you are, but it's what do you see when you look at yourself in the mirror. It's not what everybody else sees, but what do you see about yourself when you look in that mirror? I know you see your flaws, but do you see your beauty? Do you look beyond what your eyes are showing you? Can you see that hurt? Can you see some pain? Can you see that when you open your mouth to talk to your daughter, ooh, what registers and comes out is very harsh before you've even said it because it's written on your face. So those are the things that we do in our workshops. They get pretty intense too, Charles. I mean, I put pack of tissues in there too, so that if they need them, they can use them. And yesterday I saw some tears, but I saw tears in the younger girls. I didn't see any moms shed some tears because the speakers were very real.
Right.
So
Um, I want to ask you about this picture. And you said that you were surprised that no one sat in the seat. Were you? Uh, were you really surprised that no one sat in the seat?
I really was. I really was. I thought they would be fighting to sit in the princess chair. So my daughter pointed out, she said, Mommy, everything went so fast yesterday. And it did because I brought in three speakers.
All right.
Three speakers. So I didn't have a chance to really delve into it the way I normally would. But that princess seat was put there for a reason. It's a girl that
Hmm.
would have a lot of confidence that would sit in that seat and say, this is me, this is my seat. But somebody said, well, there was no box there. They may have thought that whatever, because I put boxes. They don't know what's in the boxes.
Right.
Okay, I can't tell you what's in the box that I give the mom. I'm not going to say that here, but the moms definitely don't get what's in the box that the girls get, or I should say, the girls definitely don't get what's in the mom's box. But I thought it was different that no one sat there because usually girls will clamor for that seat. And if that girl gets up, somebody else is going to scramble to it. But it just didn't happen yesterday, so that kind of threw me. You're right, it did. But that's based on just maybe they thought they couldn't. I don't know.
Yeah. So, Monica, where do you find them? Where I mean, when the people that come to you, where do you find them? How do you reach out to them?
So I used to be able to do it on the radio because it is a free event. I always like the Department of Health sponsored yesterday's event, so that I'm always able to make it free. If I don't get a sponsor, it's on me and George. Me and Big George have been doing this for 8 years out of our own pocket. And Big George is my husband with Catering's Best. So he always lays out a spread of food. You were there for that yesterday. You know what that was like. Yeah, we eat on real china. We don't, not giving you plastic china or anything like that. But people find me. I do use social media. um, Orlando Police Department came to me and said, we have some girls and moms that we would like for you to speak with. So there were some from there. And I never point out anybody. I met some at Frontline Outreach. Some just, like I said, hear about it word of mouth. Like I said, there were three families that I so wanted to come because they're having issues with their daughters right now. But for some reason they didn't make it, and I'll do something else down the line that they can come to. Like I said, I have that virtual boot camp, and I don't want to hear anybody say it's summertime, we've been virtual all year long. No, this is something that's going to be so totally different. It's informative, but it's fun. So
You know
that's
what's
it.
really, and I don't know. I sometimes I think I just live in a world that I guess just not real, and that is, it's kind of surprising to me how distant we are from each other now that the pandemic has exposed how truly dysfunctional we are when we have to come together and be together, because the way that we grew up, and it's like the time spent was like normal when it came time to parenting and time you spent with your child, and the the way that you interacted was just seemed to me normal. But now I don't know. I don't even know where to start to even try to describe what this is. I have no idea. I don't even know what it is. It's just weird to me. I don't know. It's
And no,
weird.
it is different. And I'll say this before I jump off. I think that the pandemic was ordained in the
Oh yeah.
sense of it was time for us to do a reset. And this reset is what was necessary. Um, I am grateful that we survived. You and I. I'm being selfish now because I lost so many people. I lost a lot of people, and people
Wow.
very close to me were infected with COVID. I had COVID before I even got off the air back in 2019, back in November of then. Um, all I will say, Charles, is that it gave us an opportunity to see what's really going on. And if you don't find a plan for yourself from this moment forward, you need to talk with someone because it's definitely a time for new beginnings. And I think now is the time for us to do it. You got more divorces during this time because people realize spending so much time in the house with their spouses, I don't know you. Maybe I don't like you either. And that's why I'm saying be real careful of who you jump the broom with. Why are you? And that was the other thing. This is the last thing I'm going to say, Charles. I have decided to move forward from my why, WHY. Why do I do certain things the way I do? Why don't I do certain things? And if we're living like that, then we'll have a better understanding of our behaviors and how we receive what we take in and how we respond. I can't change how you view me, but I can change how I see myself. And taken from Erica Campbell's More Than Pretty, she said, you can call me a purple buffalo, but I know if that's not what I am, I don't have to respond to that.
Right.
Why? Why are we doing some of the things that we're doing? And if you live your life now questioning yourself, mm, think about the why.
You know, Monica, as we were talking about those who say that they don't need a male to help raise their children, I think God knew what he was doing when he created a man and a woman, because I'm always blown away about the statistics on fatherless children. And the
Mhm.
statistics are just off the charts in so many areas of our lives. And if I think that if people who having anything to do with children would look at some of those statistics, if they can get past whatever that is and look at the true facts of how important it is to co-parent. And one of the things that, as far as the summit that I was talking about that we had, I was trying to express that you should have some type of father figure, whether it's somebody positive in their lives, but you should seek a father figure somehow, some way. Of course, you're talking about how selecting the right father figure, but trying to get out of
Right,
the mindset that this child does not need a father figure, whether it's the daughter or the son. But if people were to go and Google fatherless children, and you would see it's 80% this, 70% that, 80% that, 95% this, 70% this. It's crazy. And it just kind of, I guess, validate how important it is to be able to co-parent and how God
yeah.
intended it to be,
Hmm.
you know?
Um, it's one thing to say fatherless because everybody has a father. Everybody has a father. Whether that father is with you or whether that father is not in your life, could be deceased or could be circumstantial. You have a father. So when I would talk to my homeless men, I would always tell them, your wife misses you, your girlfriend misses you, but your children need you. And man, even in there, some of them, it was alcohol induced. In that moment of brightness, you could see a flicker. So reminding people that we need each other and just reach out. There are so many resources. Charles, I got to slip off because
Right.
you'd be surprised. I got my
Okay.
5-year-old grandson just
Okay.
walked in the door. I
All right.
have a
Well, I
5-year-old.
want to. Well, I love hanging out with you,
I
but tell
know. I love hanging out with
but
you.
tell people how we can find you, get in contact with you to find out more about your program real quick before we head out.
Charles, let me just say this. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for yesterday coming when I needed you, and today for um, me just whatever and having me on your show. I just really appreciate you. But my website is monicamaycommunications.com.
Hmm.
And to find out about the tea, it's info at letsspillthetea.org. And I'll respond right back to you. So just let me know what you need.
Okay. All right. Well, this is Monica May, and always a pleasure having you on the Journey 2020. And keep doing what you're
Thank
doing.
you.
God bless you and your family. Stay healthy,
Thank
stay wise, and stay
thank
distant.
you.
Thank you so
I
much for
know,
coming
right?
on the Journey 2020. Enjoy the rest of
Bless
your
you.
evening.
Thank you.
All right, that's Monica May. She is a friend for well over 20 years now. Well over 20 years. As a matter of fact, she doesn't know this, but well, she she doesn't. She might. Well, she wouldn't remember this, but I did a summit shortly after my mother passed, and the summit was actually about the 9/11 event and the effect and how the children and how we were affected by it and where do we go from here. And my mother had passed on the 10th, and the next day it was 9/11 when they flew into the Twin Towers and blah 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 blah. But she doesn't remember that like a week later or so is when I did the summit. And I told her, I said, Monica, I may have to lean on you a little bit because this show is a tribute to my mom. And so I'm a little weary right now. So you got to hold on to him and help me out. And she said, don't worry, Charles, I got you. But we've been doing stuff for well over 20 years, and she's always been the same. Monica May has always been the same, doing what she does. And we, one of God's angels, and we appreciate her. And this is the Journey 2020, and I'm Charles Morris, where we come to you every Monday at 7 p.m. And if you would like to make a comment, questions, or concern, you can always hit us up with the email. We'd love to hear from you. You may have a show idea. You may know someone that might want to be on the show. Make sure that you subscribe to us on the YouTube channel. Make sure that you like us as well. We appreciate that because we now into the social media, and a like is so very important. Yes, it is. And this is the Journey 2020. I'm Charles Morris. Be wise, be careful, be smart, be distant. You take care of yourself. I'm Charles Morris. You be blessed.